Microsoft, Sony and Nintendo are three names that dominate the gaming landscape. Google is a name that dominates the landscape of, well, just everything else. Everything else. And now it seems Google has its sights on gaming as well.
According to a new report from Kotaku's Jason Schreier, Google is planning to launch a game platform that could take on Xbox and PlayStation. Schreier says, according to 5 sources, Google is working on 1, some sort of streaming platform, 2, some sort of hardware, and 3, an attempt to bring game developers under the Google umbrella through recruitment or acquisitions. Apparently, Google representative met with several big video game companies at the Games Developer Conference back in March this year to gauge interest in its streaming platform, which is currently codenamed Yeti. The company also took meetings at this year's E3 and is even looking to buy development studios entirely. Schreier says the streaming service will be akin to Nvidia's GeForce Now, allowing gamers on even the piddliest hardware setups to play high-end games by streaming them from Google's beefy computers. One source familiar with the Yeti streaming tech said, "Imagine playing The Witcher 3 within a tab on Google Chrome."
No, thank you.
No, not for you.
No.
Why? What's wrong with?
It's just that doesn't sound appealing at all. It's just
Mike says no, guys.
One idea being floated around as well is that YouTube will be heavily integrated with an overlay to allow users to easily jump into video walkthroughs. Google's also apparently working on gaming hardware that could link up with the streaming service, but details on that were very thin. IGN points out that this recent rumour adds some context to Google's recent recruitment of industry veterans from EA, PlayStation and Xbox. But Schreier says some developers Kotaku's spoken to are sceptical about the whole thing, pointing to the red flag that is Google's history of abandoning initiatives and the lack of internet infrastructure in rural areas. So this is all rumour, this is all just reports from Jason Schreier from Kotaku, spoken to 5 people. Some of the information is secondhand, some of it is from within the company and stuff. People are working very close to it, but there's a lot of buzz around streaming generally, Schreier says, and that's maybe my biggest thing from the whole interview, was that he says that at E3, Games Developers Conference and stuff, a lot of excitement about streaming, and not like Twitch streaming, gaming, like getting the game streamed to you from elsewhere, from a server farm elsewhere, and it doesn't matter what device you're on, you can play any game, 4K, 60 FPS, whatever, because you're not doing it on your local hardware, you're streaming it from elsewhere. All it depends on is the internet connection.
There's loads of talk about this now. We saw Igimo recently saying that streaming will be a thing this will be the last console generation because everything will be streaming, right. And loads of conversations kicked up from that. And this is another company that's aiming from the streaming angle. We talked about EA recently, where all they're talking about is the cloud infrastructure and going forward in the future with cloud-based services and all that sort of stuff. Everyone's talking about this streaming, and we say every time, where's the internet to support that? There's not enough internet has to be good. It all relies on the infrastructure of the internet, and it's not good enough, and I can't see it. I mean, we struggle to get connection. Sometimes our internet dips to 2018, right? And our internet dips in the office, and we're screwed. We're absolutely screwed for maybe a whole day, right? It's in and out all day. I mean, how expect us to work, never mind play games? It's ridiculous. Not that we do those same things, because we're definitely working all the time in the office. We never play. That's right.
Gaming is work.
And in other news, Cyberpunk 2077, the game from everyone's favourite Polish developer, CD Projekt Red, might still be a way off. According to CD Projekt's Adam Kaczynski, who spoke to Polish site Bankia this week, the first-person open-world game is still in pre-alpha, which is far from being the finished article. Apparently, that demo shown off behind closed doors at E3 2018 is the most polished part of the game. Quote, "This is the most polished part of the game we have now, prepared in some sense to show it to people outside the company." Kaczynski also confirmed the studio has 350 people working on the game, but that number is steadily growing. The marketing budget will be much bigger than the studio's previous AAA game, The Witcher 3, and it is something CD Projekt want to invest heavily in. That it's still in pre-alpha, for my money, means that it's not in a playable state. You can't play the game from beginning to end. That's what I understand pre-alpha to be. So it's still fragmented. Whatever they're working on, there's little parts of the game that you can play here and there, and they polished up this one part. But this demo is a highly polished demo that they showed us specifically, so obviously put loads of work into that. This leads to the age-old question, when is Cyberpunk coming out? The theory now is it's 2020, right? Because the original Cyberpunk, that the game 77 is based off. It's called Cyberpunk 2020, so it would make a lot of sense to publish that in 2020 is what I'm trying to say.
And does that make it a next-gen game? I mean, it could well be a kind of game that straddles both generations as well. Like it comes out right at the end of this generation, but also comes out in a slightly better version, for the next gen whenever that arrives. Because it could arrive before 2020. We could have PlayStation 5 next year. In theory. I mean, who knows? And last up in misunderstood masterpiece news, BioWare executive producer Mark Dara, who worked on Dragon Age and on the upcoming Anthem, took to Twitter this week to talk about Mass Effect Andromeda. Andromeda launched on March 21st last year to lukewarm reviews and a storm of negativity online over its half-baked animations and dialogue. Remember this? You know what I'm talking about. Well, Dara wanted to talk about whether or not Andromeda got a fair shake at the time. He suggested that the reason Andromeda's reputation took such a battering was because of the amount of high-quality games that arrived around the same time. Quote, Mass Effect Andromeda is a deeply flawed game, especially at launch, but the review environment was crowded. Nier, Neo, Horizon, and Zelda all launched in Mass Effect Andromeda's window. Each does something better than Mass Effect Andromeda, again, a flawed game. Dara said systems that are pretty decent end up getting scrutinized against superiorly implemented ones in such an environment. He suggested that a different release window may have pushed Andromeda from a 72 to a 77 or a 78, and that would have had some effect on sales. But word of mouth is the biggest factor, he says. In the end, he acknowledged Mass Effect Andromeda has a lot of problems and simply got lapped by genuinely better games.
If it wasn't for better games, then our game would be reviewed higher. That's the bullshit argument, right? Because you can take a game from 5 years ago, and so long as it's not compared to all the games these days, that could get a 90%, 100%.
It's a difficult argument.
That's not how it works, is it?
To buy, really. Context is important, sure. I think that's important. Best example for me is Dragon Age Inquisition, another EA game, another BioWare game. I mean, if you played that, after you played The Witcher 3, which followed like a year later, the Dragon Age Inquisition seemed like a dead, lifeless husk of a game to me personally, because I played The Witcher 3 first, and I had that context in my mind, and The Witcher 3 seemed like a masterpiece in many ways. Dragon Age Inquisition just felt like quite a vanilla-ish, empty game. And if I'd have played Inquisition first when that came out before The Witcher, who knows how my review... So I do understand that the context is important, but I don't think that if you take Nier away and Neo and Zelda away and Horizon, if you take all them games away, I still think Mass Effect Andromeda gets panned when it comes out by some people, mainly because of the animations. That was like the poster child for the game, but the reviews wouldn't have been, I don't think the reviews would have been much higher than they were.
Yeah, it feels like he's not taking accountability. He's trying to deflect some of the responsibility for why Mass Effect Andromeda was shit. You can't say our game is shit because those games were good. Your game's just shit, dude.
Are you ready for a Google streaming service for gaming? Let us know what you think about this down in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. There should be another video right there if you want to watch that, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.